When we think of a king triumphantly coming into his town, his city, his capital, we often think of the king up on a big, mighty horse, there mounted up on his horse, riding above all the crowd. Like Alexander the Great did when he rode Bucephalus and conquered all of a big portion of Asia. But Jesus did not do that. He chose to ride in on a donkey. Of course, there's got to be a reason why he chose a donkey. First thought that comes to my mind is symbolism. Jesus was trying to represent something by riding a donkey instead of a horse. Either way, he was borrowing the creature that he was going to ride into Jerusalem with. Why didn't he just borrow a horse? Because he wanted to represent something. He wanted to be a symbol of something when he chose to ride a donkey. So the first obvious one that comes to my mind is humility. He was riding the same creature that the common man, the common person of Jerusalem would ride. They would have a donkey more than they would have a horse. Or maybe because a donkey represents peace. Often donkeys were used as part of the treaty signing between nations rather than a horse. So Jesus was saying, I'm riding in Jerusalem in a peace. Maybe some people reach a little bit further and they say, the donkey's a beast of burden. And it represents that Jesus is carrying on his shoulders the weight of all of our sins, to representing that he was coming to Jerusalem to carry away our sin. And some even go to say that Jesus, by riding a donkey, was identifying with the marginalized people, both of Jerusalem and the world around him. As Kat Kendena says, Jesus used the donkey to connect with the common people. But I think the answer of why Jesus chose to ride a donkey in is hidden in plain view right in front of us. Matthew and John allude to it in Zechariah 9:9, where they read, Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Jesus was trying to live out this prophecy as he entered Jerusalem. And all the disciples and those in Jerusalem who welcomed him recognized it, and they shouted out, as Luke says, Blessed be the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Mark in 11:10 adds a slight twist to it and makes it much more Jewish. And he says, the kingdom of our father David. So that is what they were looking for, is their kingdom of their father David to come and to bring a new rule into Jerusalem, their capital. But why not a horse? Is there not any prophecies about a horse? Doug Bookman has a good little phrase that I would like to read to you. And it says, the donkey was a royal steed in the Old Testament. The king rode on a donkey. That was not a horse. That he'd be a conqueror. But because he was in charge here, he rode in on a donkey. Think about that. Jesus wasn't conquering Jerusalem. He was already king of Jerusalem. He was merely riding in to his capital on a donkey. King would use a horse if he was attacking Jerusalem, which would come in the future. But Jesus wasn't attacking Jerusalem. He was merely asserting his kingship and being welcomed by his subjects into his city. And maybe it's when we think that he should be on horse, we're drawn from the wrong culture. We're thinking of the Greeks, like Alexander the Great and his proud stallion. But the donkey was much more of a Jewish symbol. Jesus was a Jew riding into his Jewish capital. And if we go back in history, I think it's about 1,000 years before, when King David was about to die and he was going to pass over his kingship, his kingdom, to Solomon. 1 Kings 1:44, we hear that he had Nathan his prophet put Solomon on his mule, the king's mule, and ride him around proclaiming he was the new king. Jesus was drawn from his Jewish roots and ancestries, pronouncing himself king as a Jewish king would do, riding on a donkey, not a horse.